Theovis, the idea made visual. Press a key on a piano, and a microphone records a single wiggling line. Yet your ear hears a definite pitch. Somewhere, that one wiggle gets turned into a frequency.
Right. So how does a flat, messy signal in time become a clean answer like this is the note A at 440 Hz?
That translation is the Fourier transform. Today, we're going to actually see what it's doing, not just write its formula. The central idea is this: almost any signal can be built by adding up pure, steady frequencies. The Fourier transform takes a finished signal and tells you how much of each frequency went in.
Okay, but how much of each frequency sounds vague. What is a pure frequency exactly that we can measure?
When Fourier first claimed that even a jagged, cornered shape could be built from smooth sine waves, the great mathematicians of his day, Lagrange among them, simply did not believe him.
Smooth, round waves adding up to a sharp corner? I can see why that felt impossible at first.
And yet, it is true, with enough of them. That bold, doubted claim grew into one of the most useful ideas in all of science. Here is the cleanest picture of a frequency: a vector of fixed length, rotating around the origin at a steady rate. 1 full turn per second is 1 Hertz.
Oh, and its shadow on the horizontal axis just slides back and forth as a cosine wave.
Exactly. A rotating vector and a cosine are the same object, seen 2 ways. Hold on to that. It's the whole trick. Mathematically, that spinning vector is e to the I 2 pi ft. Euler's formula says it equals cosine plus I sine, the position of a point walking around a circle.
So instead of juggling sines and cosines separately, one complex exponential carries the whole rotation in a single term.
Now, the plan. We will take our signal and physically wind it around the origin, using one of these rotating vectors as the winding speed.
Wind it around a circle? Like wrapping a strip of paper around a pole?
Just like that. And watching one number while we wind will reveal every frequency hiding inside. You might ask, why build everything from sines and not some other shape? Because a pure sine is special. Push a stable, linear system with one, and out comes the very same frequency, only rescaled and delayed.
So sines are the shapes that don't get scrambled. That's why they're the natural language for waves and circuits.
On the left, our signal is being wrapped around the origin. The distance from center is the signal's value. The angle is set by the winding speed we choose. Watch the red dot. That's the center of mass of the wound-up curve. For most winding speeds, the curve is smeared evenly around the circle, so the center of mass sits near the middle.
But right there, when the winding speed hits a certain value, the dot suddenly lunges way out from the center.
That lunge is the heart of it. When the winding speed matches a frequency actually inside the signal, the high parts of the signal all pile up on the same side of the circle, instead of canceling.
So the center of mass swinging out is the signal shouting, "Yes, that frequency is in me."
And the size of that swing tells you how strongly. The graph on the lower right records that strength against every winding speed we try. Here's what winding really is, in 3 dimensions. Time runs along the long axis, and the rotating vector traces a corkscrew, a helix, spiraling through time.
Whoa. So when we wind the signal, we're looking straight down that corkscrew and seeing its shadow as a circle?
Exactly. The transform multiplies the signal by this corkscrew and averages. That average is the center of mass you just watched. Speed the winding up, and the corkscrew coils more tightly, more turns packed into the same stretch of time. Every frequency is a corkscrew with its own tightness.
So winding the signal is really asking, which of these corkscrews does my signal secretly line up with?
Now, the famous formula is just a sentence. G of t is the signal. E to the minus I 2 pi ft is the winding vector at speed f. The integral is the averaging, the center of mass.
So g hat of f is literally how far out did the center of mass swing when we wound at speed f. The scary integral is just our red dot.
That's the whole transform. Every symbol you were once told to memorize is a piece of the machine you just watched run. Let's make it concrete. Take a signal that's a 2 Hz cosine plus a 5 Hz cosine. Wind at 2 Hz, and the 2 Hz part lines up. The center of mass lunges out into a peak.
Wind at 3.5, and everything smears around evenly, so the center of mass sits near 0. No peak. Only 2 and 5 light up.
So the machine hands back exactly the recipe. Spikes at 2 and 5 Hz, nothing in between. And here is the inverse. Flip the sign in the exponent, integrate over frequency instead of time, and you rebuild the original signal from its recipe.
Same machine, run backwards. Frequencies in, signal out. The 2 formulas are mirror images of each other.
Let's make the signal richer, a sum of 2 pure tones. Now, as we sweep the winding speed, the center of mass lunges out not once, but twice.
2 spikes in the graph, one for each frequency we mixed in. The machine separated them cleanly.
That's the superpower. No matter how tangled the signal looks in time, winding pulls the ingredients apart, 1 peak per frequency. Add a 3rd tone, and you get a 3rd peak. Keep going, and an arbitrary signal produces a whole landscape of peaks. It's spectrum.
So the spectrum on the right is the signal's full recipe, which frequencies and exactly how much of each?
Here's something beautiful. A blocky square wave, all sharp corners, is secretly a sum of odd frequencies. 1, 3, 5, 7, each weaker than the last. Wind it, and peaks appear at exactly those odd harmonics, fading as they climb. The sharp corners of the wave live entirely in the high frequencies.
So the crispness of an edge is really a chorus of high notes hiding inside it.
So if you forget every formula, keep this. Wind the signal at a speed. Mark how far the center of mass moves. Then do it for all speeds. That curve is the Fourier transform.
It's strangely physical. Nothing mysterious, just wrapping and averaging.
One thing I glossed over: the center of mass is a point in the plane, so it carries an angle as well as a distance. That angle is the phase, where each wave starts.
So the transform tells us both how strong each frequency is and how it's lined up in time. Strength and timing.
And notice we wound clockwise. That's the minus sign in the formula. Wind the other way, counterclockwise, and you get negative frequencies, the mirror partners that keep a real signal real.
Negative frequency used to sound like nonsense, but it's just spinning the opposite way. That's oddly satisfying.
Because no information is thrown away, the process is reversible. Hand me the spectrum, and I can add those rotating vectors back together and reconstruct the original signal exactly.
So time view and frequency view are two languages for the same thing, and we can translate freely between them?
In practice, we don't have a smooth curve. We have samples, a list of numbers from a microphone or a sensor. The same idea becomes the discrete Fourier transform.
And if we sample too slowly, a high note can disguise itself as a low one. That's aliasing, isn't it?
Exactly. Sample fast enough, and the recipe comes back out clean. There's a deep tension here. A signal that is sharp and brief in time, a click, needs an enormous spread of frequencies to build that sharpness.
So you can't pin down exactly when and exactly what frequency at the same time. That's the uncertainty principle.
The very same mathematics. It isn't only quantum mechanics. At its core, it's Fourier. Music isn't one fixed set of frequencies. It changes. So we slide a short window along the signal, transform each little piece, and stack the answers.
That's a spectrogram, the colorful picture that shows pitch rising and falling over time, like a visual score.
Once you can move between time and frequency, doors open everywhere. MP3 audio keeps the frequencies you can hear and discards the rest. JPEG does the same for images.
And to remove a hum or hiss, you just slide over to the frequency view, delete that peak, and transform back.
And in physics, it turns hard calculus on waves and heat into simple algebra, which, fittingly, is exactly why Fourier invented it. Here's a hint of something deeper. A messy operation called convolution, sliding one signal across another to blur or filter it, turns into plain multiplication once you are in the frequency view.
So hard smearing in time becomes an easy multiply in frequency? That sounds like a whole episode of its own.
It is, and it is exactly why audio filters, and even multiplying enormous numbers, lean on this transform. One more piece. Computing this naively is slow. In 1965, Cooley and Tukey published the fast Fourier transform, dropping the cost from n squared to n log n.
So that's why my phone can do this in real time. The fast algorithm is what made the whole idea practical.
But that sliding window trick has a cost. Use a short window to catch a fast change, and your frequency reading goes fuzzy. use a long window for sharp frequencies, and you lose track of exactly when.
The uncertainty trade-off again. You can have the timing or the pitch sharp, but never both perfectly at once. Let me say it back. A frequency is a rotating vector. We wind the signal with it and watch the center of mass.
And wherever the winding speed resonates with the signal, the center of mass swings out, marking that frequency, its strength, and its phase. Sweep every speed, and you've read the signal's hidden recipe. So, next time a tuner names your note, an MRI builds a picture, a radio finds a station, or your headphones erase a hum, picture a winding machine, quietly spinning a signal around a circle.
One idea. Hiding inside half the technology I use every day. I don't think I'll hear a chord the same way again.
If you want to go deeper, here are the sources this rests on, including Fourier's own 1822 work, where it all began with heat. We leaned hard on one magic fact, that a complex exponential spins. Next time, we'll see why imaginary numbers are really the language of rotation.
Same spinning vector, a deeper reason. See you there.
If it finally clicked, subscribe. It really helps. And I'll see you in the next one.